According to the Institute of Applied Geosciences, the area of glaciers in the mountain ranges of Kyrgyzstan has decreased by 25% over the past 70 years. From the 40s to the 70s of the last century, scientists began to study glaciers and calculated the number, size, and area of glaciers. The catalogue they created states that there are 8,208 glaciers in Kyrgyzstan, with a total area of 8,076 square kilometers. At present, this scientific research continues at the Tianshan High Mountain Scientific Center of the National Academy of Sciences. In 1948, in the village of Kızılsu, former Pokrovka of the Jete district, the Institute of Geography of the USSR Academy of Sciences opened the Tianshan Physical and Geographical Station. Since that, from 1948 to the present day, this scientific center has continued its work. The main task of the station is to monitor the state of the glaciers in the Kyrgyz Tianshan and Pamir Alai, as well as to conduct scientific research. This is what today's Tianshan International Scientific Center does. We carry out such work from Issyk to the glaciers of Sarıter, Bordo, Grigoriev, located in Karabatkak. In these three places, we installed automatic weather stations to track climate change. These stations operate year-round. We work at the Tianshan Research Center. Our workday starts at 9 a.m. We measure temperature, humidity, wind direction, record data on cloud conditions, and conduct other studies to assess climate change. Clouds have many different names. For example, we recorded the name of today's rain cloud as the rain heaps. We take these measurements at 9 a.m., noon, 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. Then once a week we collect data and send it to the central office, where specialists work to process this data. They analyze what changes have occurred over the week, month and year, and based on this they conduct observations and draw conclusions.
Айында кандай өзгөрүү, жылына кандай өзгөрүүлөр болуп атат, ошондо мен байкоо жүргүзүп турабыз.
Бул Чоң Кызылсуу өрөөнүндө Чоң Кызылсуу метео станциясы деп аталат.
This is Чоң Кызылсуу Valley. The Чоң Кызылсуу weather station is located here. We have been operating it continuously since 1948 until now. Here we use both old analog methods and modern automatic weather stations. You see, we record an increase in temperature, but precipitation, judging by long-term trends, remains unchanged. What does this lead to? First of all, these changes lead to a reduction in the area thickness and volume of glaciers, as well as their retreat up to the slopes. According to the latest research, glaciers have decreased by 25% since 1950. The area of the Bateshsu Glacier has decreased by 0.7 square kilometers, and the area of Tashtuk has decreased by 1 square kilometer. And the Karabatkak Glacier has decreased by 0.7 square kilometers, and its foot has decreased by 700 meters. Also, glaciers located in the Talas region are rapidly melting and have decreased by up to 50%. Glaciers in the Jalabat region are also rapidly melting. The melting trend of glaciers in Narin and Issyk is a little slower. This is due to the fact that glaciers there are located at a much higher altitude. Hey, Narelle, hey, the kettle can drive them away.
Kızıl Su'dan belki Gımız'a çeyin.
The route from Kyrgyzstan to GMC is 28 kilometers or about an hour's drive by car. From the GMC and closer to the Kashkater glaciers, there is a house we call a glaciological house. The journey to this horse by horseback takes about 2 hours, and if you go on foot, the route will take 3.5 to 4 hours. We walk along rocky paths. Sometimes we have to cross large water courses where streams mix with the main channel.
Şu Tianshan fizik geografik stansiyasının okumuşları 60.
Scientists of the Tianshan Physical Geographical Station in the 60s and 70s established that 13,000 years ago the area of all the glaciers of the Tianshan and Pamiralai was 60,000 square kilometers. According to our research in the field of paleoglaciology, this is the first stage, the first phase in which we are in now. Over the past 13,000 years, this area has decreased by 6,684 square kilometers. This indicates that natural processes of environmental change have been taking place in the region over the past 13,000 years. Around Lake Issyk as well as in the areas of the Karabatkak, Bordeaux, source of the Narin River, Grigoriev and Saryter glaciers, we have built scenario models that predict whether these glaciers will survive by 21,000 under various climate conditions. If the temperature continues to rise rapidly, exceeding the 5-degree mark, there is a possibility of the complete disappearance of our glaciers. Forecasts made by scientists based on scientific research make you think. According to the scientists, in 2000, small glaciers located at an altitude of 3 to 5,000 meters, will completely disappear. After these glaciers melt, the total area of ice will decrease to 50%. What awaits us in this situation? Experts warn that in the next 10 years there will be a drought all over the world, especially in Central Asia. As a result, it goes without saying that Kyrgyzstan is entering a dangerous phase. Glaciers make up only 4% of the total area of Kyrgyzstan, and in Central Asian region, Kyrgyzstan is the leader in the location of glaciers.
Борбордук Азия регионунда ошо эки чоң тоо система бар. Тянь-Шань жана Памир-Алай тоо системалары.
There are two main mountain systems in Central Asia, Tian-Shan and Pamir-Alai, most of which are in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. These regions are rich in glacial water resources. Kyrgyzstan is dominated by the Tian-Shan mountain system and the northern part of the Pamir-Alai in the south of the country. However, compared to previous years, glaciers are shrinking due to global warming. Glaciers are considered to be a product of climate. Unfortunately, global climate change continues, and we cannot say when it will stop. This process, according to the forecasts, will continue until 21,000.
100 жылга чейин бул процесс кете берет.
Biz hazır Kashqatar möngüsünde turabız.
We're currently on the Kashqatar Glacier, where we come once a week to carry out our work. What exactly do? We have a so-called psychometric box, inside which there is a thermograph and a hydrograph. We install tapes on these devices. These tapes automatically record and show us temperature and humidity data for a week.
Bu teşip atkan o aparatus şu parabur деп аталат. Şu parabur менен şundan bunu geçeriz.
This device that we use for drilling is called paradrill. With it, we drill into the glacier. Previously, before the paradrill, we drilled manually. In addition, we have two additional zones. One we call the ice fall. Above the icefall is the middle zone and the upper zone. In the middle zone, an automatic measuring device is installed, which we call AMS, as well as measuring rods. The middle zone is located at the altitude of 3,800 meters above the sea level, and the upper zone is at the altitude of 4,200 meters. We climb to the upper zone once a month to conduct observations and measurements. These stones that you see on the surface and those in the central lie on glaciers. Scientifically, it is called a moraine, and the ice under this stone does not melt, because the stones protect it, forming small hills. Ice is preserved under these hills. According to the research, the average thickness of glaciers is about 100 meters. If we accept the tendency of glacier melting, then the glacier melts up to 0.5 to 1 meter per year. Thus, if 1 square kilometer of ice melts from a glacier 100 meters thick, then it will be 10 cubic kilometers of ice. If 10 square kilometers of glaciers melted, then we can understand that 100 cubic kilometers of ice melted. It turns out that if melting ice is converted into water, then for 1 square kilometer of a glacier 100 meters thick, 100 million cubic meters melt, and the melting of a glacier with an area of 10 square kilometers means 1 billion cubic meters of water. For comparison, the largest hydroelectric power station in Kyrgyzstan, the Toktogul Reservoir, has a maximum water volume of 19 billion cubic meters. Thus, the loss of 10 square kilometers of a glacier 100 meters thick means about 1/20th of the water that can fit in the Toktogul Reservoir.
Парауырмен тешкен жерибизге мындай 2 секциялык зейкаларды орнотуп атабыз.
We install 2-section rods in the holes drilled with a parrot drill. These rods reach a total length of 4 meters, since we drill to such a depth. We leave the rods so that their upper part is visible, so that later, when returning for observations, they can be easily found. We make marks on the rods. For example, now on the rod you can see that 9 centimeters have opened. We write down this value, 9 centimeters, and compare it with the previous data to find out how much ice has melted in a week.
Эсептөөлөр боюнча бир жумадан бир 30-35 сантиметрден ээрип атат.
Based on our observations, we have determined that approximately 30 to 35 centimeters of ice melts in a week. When we installed this rod, its length was 2 meters. And now, as you can see, part of it has already melted. "45% of glaciers are located in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan, which are considered to be the water sources of the Central Asian region. Currently, there are a total of 9,959 glaciers in our mountains. The total area is 6,683 square kilometers. The main large glaciers are located in the Issyk-Kul and Narin regions. The water flowing from these glaciers reaches 50 to 70% in summer.
Бүгүнкү күндө суу проблемалары жалпы дүйнө жүзүндө
Today, water problems are relevant all over the world, including Central Asia and in particular the Kyrgyz Republic. The importance and relevance are constantly growing and the shortage of water is becoming more acute every day. So, if we cannot stop the melting of glaciers, what should we do? Kyrgyzstan, as the birthplace of glaciers, needs to raise this issue on a global level. Work on this has been underway in recent years, and President Sadir Japarov called on the participants of the One Planet Summit in Paris, France, in 2023 to join efforts to find ways to save glaciers and cooperate in protecting the water resource formation zone.
Кыргызстан, являясь высокогорной страной,
Kyrgyzstan, being a high mountain country, is faced firsthand with the problem of melting glaciers and the risk of glacial lakes breaking through the context of climate change. From this high rostrum, I would like to invite everyone to take an active part and make their specific commitments to preserve mountain ecosystems. We hope for worldwide support for Kyrgyzstan's initiatives at the UNESCO site and joint fruitful cooperation in preserving mountain ecosystems and glaciers. Thank you for your attention. Therefore, Kyrgyzstan needs to constantly talk about the problem of glaciers and negotiate at the global level. On this occasion, the president of the Kyrgyz Republic, Sadir Japarov, spoke at the high-level segment of the 28th Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change in Dubai, United Arab Emirates.
эксперттердин баамында
According to the experts in Kyrgyzstan, as in the entire Central Asian region, there is a sharp increase in temperature exceeding the average for the planet. I call on the world community, primarily developed countries, to actively support developing vulnerable mountain states. Only by joint efforts we can change the direction of our development and lay the foundation for a safe and sustainable future of our planet. Kyrgyzstan is currently making every effort to preserve glaciers. Our main task now is to attract the attention of neighboring countries and the largest countries in the world to this issue. Kyrgyzstan and a number of Central Asian countries cannot stop the melting of glacier. This is a problem that must be addressed and solved on a planetary scale. As for the global climate change, world leaders are talking about the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from large-scale production. Kyrgyzstan also plans to halve greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, find other energy sources, and mainly promote the use of green energy. This requires a lot of money. In this regard, the international community must definitely come to the aid of Kyrgyzstan. The head of state's initiative to preserve glaciers has begun to receive support at the international level. As part of the presidential green economy project, Germany has decided to write off the debt of the government of Kyrgyzstan to the German Development Bank, KfW, in the amount of 14.9 million euros, and it is also known where they will be directed. Also, during the state visit of the President of Turkey, Tayyip Erdogan, to the Kyrgyz Republic on November 4 to 6, 2024, it was announced that Turkey has decided to write off Kyrgyzstan external debt in the amount of $58.9 million in exchange for the implementation of green economy projects. Also, On November the 12th, 2024, President Sadir Japarov, speaking at the 29th Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, proposed a mechanism for exchanging external debt for sustainable development projects to achieve the goals set in the Paris Agreement and create a climate trust fund. Dear participants, we're seeing problems such as melting glaciers, their reduction in area, reduction of water resources, droughts, and desertification. For its part, Kyrgyzstan proposed a mechanism for replacing external debt with climate and sustainable projects. We propose restructuring of state external debt by replacing it with specific green projects. In particular, using the mechanism of the Climate Trust Fund being created in Kyrgyzstan, projects in the field of ecology and sustainable mountain development will be financed. I am inviting interested countries to take part in the work of this fund.
Эми акыркы жылдары бизде тоо кен өнөр жайда өнүк жатат.
In recent years, our mining industry has been actively developing, including near glaciers. There are opinions that mining of minerals in these areas causes significant damage to glaciers, destroying them, polluting and contributing to their destruction. We have laws that must be followed. There is a section in the Water Code that clearly states that no industrial work should be carried out on or near glaciers. Employees of the mining industry are now trying to adhere to these rules and minimize the impact of glaciers, which is a very positive thing. For example, there are enterprises located near glaciers, such as Kumtor. Of course, there is damage from their activities, but it is local in nature. However, it would be wrong to say that this affects all glaciers. We urgently need to develop laws on environmental protection, especially glaciers and water use, and change the attitude of the population towards the environment. Otherwise, the situation will get worse and worse. Cities are covered with black smoke, which negatively affect the health of the population and also leads to pollution of the soil and running water. Climate change, the latest 2-degree warming of the planet, is causing glaciers to melt rapidly. In the spring months, the sun is very hot, the snow on the mountain top melts quickly and the villages are flooded. You see that this year in the southern regions of Kyrgyzstan there have been a large number of mud flows. Previously, we had certain seasonal temperature indicators, but over the past 10 years, they have begun to shift by about 2 weeks. Spring temperature indicators began to arrive 2 weeks earlier, which causes rapid melting of snow in mid-mountain zones. This water flows into the rivers at a time when it is not needed for irrigation and simply leaves. And during the period when irrigation work begins, water does not appear in the ditches because the glaciers have not yet begun to melt. Melting of glaciers occurs later. These changes in seasonal temperature indicators that we are observing are associated with global climate change. Melting glaciers affect not only agriculture and international relations. In the region where the glacier is located, biodiversity is also declining. The decrease in the number of animals such as snow leopards, ibex living in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan and at the foot of glaciers leads to disappearance of other small creatures in the biological chain. Due to the climate change, the situation in our country is becoming more complicated every day. For example, due to hot summers and little snowfall, arable land is left without water in summer, and the same situation is in the pastures. Pastures have dried up, small springs have dried up due to lack of rain and water, and Kyrgyz pastures, once lush and green, are now turning into grey dust. Cattle graze on practically bare ground without enough feed. Moreover, in recent years the number of livestock breeders has increased, and the number of livestock has doubled compared to Soviet times. We should continue to study glaciers. The state must support institutes that are engaged in such research, because over the past 30 years attention to science has been insufficient. However, our scientists are currently working together with scientists from Japan, China, and Russia to study the changes and evolution of glaciers in the Tian Shan mountain system. They are analyzing what changes are happening, what direction we are moving in, and what the situation will be with glaciers, which are a source of water in 2040 and 2050, as well as how much water will be available in the future.
Bu birinci
First of all, we cooperate with scientists from the Institute on Water Problems of the Russian Academy of Sciences, scientists from Moscow University, the Free University of Brussels, Kyoto University, and University of Reading in the UK, as well as the Institute of Tibetan Plateau Studies at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. In addition, we plan to start working with the scientists from the University of Freiburg in Switzerland. The Tian Shan Scientific Center has agreements with all these organizations, thanks to which we conduct joint expeditions, publish scientific reports and articles that are published annually in Europe, Russia, China, and other countries, reflecting the results of our work. However, we have problems, and the most important of them is training of young personnel. Our profession requires high qualifications. To become a good specialist, you need to be an excellent geographer, mathematician, IT expert, and surveyor. Only a person with all these skills can become a real professional. We must prepare the younger generation who in future will study glaciers and water resources, as well as conduct observations of them. We should not spare funds for the study and monitoring of glaciers. The training of young specialists in this field is the need of the time. Of course, work is being done in this area. However, this is not enough. We should pay double attention to this. In addition to the establishment of institutions, we should always provide financial support to scientific institutions and pay close attention to natural sciences such as glaciology, hydrology, and meteorology. So, despite all the difficulties, we come here once a week. We collect data, update it, and leave. The reason is that we, the Kyrgyz, have lived in front of these glaciers for a long time and lived in harmony with nature. If we want to turn Kyrgyzstan into a rich and prosperous country in the future, time has shown that we need to save the water. which is the source of life force of the country, and the glacier from which the water is created.